This is one of the most downright terrifying stories featured on the channel. The footage shown here showcases two males sleeping in a room, but as you can tell, the bedroom door mysteriously opens. But what happens after is something that can't be explained unless you watch it with your very own eyes. Here's a dramatized version of what went down in this horrific summer night. One of the most anticipated seasons of the year was finally here, and the immense summer heat was telling me to leave the crib. But before heading out to enjoy endless days at the beach, I first thought of dropping by my friend's house to have a sleepover. Fred's place was a 2-story house in a remote village, and since his parents were away on vacation in the Maldives, it felt like the perfect time to have the entire place all to ourselves with no one to reprimand us. So as soon as I arrived, I saw that Fred had already set up the Xbox in the living room, and although there weren't going to be any late-night parties, we were going to have non-stop television and gaming 24/7. On the first night, Fred decided to call it quits after enjoying a game of Halo. However, when I checked the time, it was only 11:45 p.m. "Tired so soon, old Freddy?" I asked, surprised he couldn't stay up till 4 in the morning. "Ha, very funny. I just need a bit more rest. Perhaps tomorrow I can make it until 5 in the morning," he replied with a confident smirk. "Yeah, right, Grandpa." He threw a pillow at me and went upstairs, leaving me alone to play some more games. Then, around 2 a.m., I felt the need to quench my thirst. And so, standing up, I went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and took a jug of water. Surprisingly, my energy level was still at 80%. After pouring myself a glass, I returned the jug to the refrigerator. But upon closing its metal doors, I took a sidelong glance and saw the glass empty. Whoa! What the hell? I picked up the glass, unsure of whether I had just imagined it or not. Bewildered, I poured myself another glass and went upstairs to the bedroom, where I saw Fred was sound asleep. I poked him several times to see if he was faking it. However, he failed to respond to any of my attempts, so it couldn't have been Fred, I told myself. Then, as I took a sip, not a single drop of water entered my mouth, leaving me dumbfounded. Moments later, the closet across my bed gradually opened, startling me quite a bit, since I remember locking it before coming downstairs early that day. The following day, I told my friend about this bizarre experience I had last night, and the first thing he told me was, "Are you sure you didn't have anything else to drink aside from water? We both know that my dad left his vodka in the kitchen." "Do I look like I'm messing around, Fred?" I replied, feeling a bit irritated that I never got to rejuvenate myself with a glass of water. "Well, it doesn't seem like it. However, it seems like you were either drunk last night or you stayed up too late," he said, a hint of ridicule in his tone. I suppose I would gravitate toward the second one a bit more, but one thing's for sure, I hadn't lost my marbles just yet. So, since that experience wasn't particularly life-threatening, the day went on with more gaming and a couple of movies on Netflix. After enjoying ourselves until 2 in the morning, I decided to hit the sack, leaving my friend downstairs to watch more television. Then, an hour passed and I suddenly woke to my bladder's desperate call to take a piss. And as I walked toward the restroom, another door creaked open. Curious, I crept toward the door, swung it open, and there, I saw my friend's back facing me as he stared at the wall. What's he doing? I wondered. I never thought Fred had any sleeping disorders, so if he was sleepwalking, this was my first time seeing it. But then, what happened next left me slack-jawed. Moments later, he began banging his head on the wall, painting it red with his own blood. His head then made a complete 360 towards me, like something out of the Exorcist movie. All I could see was a distorted face demonically growling at me. Terrified, I ran downstairs, where my eyes met with my friend's troubled look. "Hey dude, it's 3 in the morning. What's with all the banging? Is everything okay?" he asked sincerely, as I scanned his entire body. "Hey, what's the matter with you? You're giving me the creeps. Were you here the entire time? Are you sure you weren't upstairs moments ago?" "What are you talking about? I was just in the living room watching TV, even after you hit the hay." Confused, I told him that I saw him upstairs in one of the rooms banging his head with such a strong impact that I thought I would have to call 911. Alright, if this is some kind of prank, I'm gonna hit you so hard that you'll regret it for the rest of your life. I nodded, assuring him that this wasn't a joke and that I was genuinely concerned. Then, we both went upstairs and I gingerly pointed to the room. As soon as he clicked on the switch, the lights went on and we saw cracks on the wall. Look, I understand it's not easy getting up in the wee hours of the morning, but these cracks have always been here, considering it's an old house, so you must have mistaken it for a person. I know what I saw, Fred! I exclaimed furiously. So what are you trying to suggest? I thought you didn't believe in the supernatural. He teased. Whatever. Let's just go to bed already. On the third night, I had gotten so paranoid that all I could think of was going home, but I didn't want Fred to think I was a coward. And so, I literally counted sheep until I went to sleep. But just when I thought I had obtained tranquility, I felt something yank my legs, lifting them up in the air and slamming them back down repeatedly. I remember feeling my entire body completely airborne as I kicked and screamed at thin air in a flight or fight reaction. I kept hollering for help, but for some odd reason my friend couldn't hear me at all. I didn't know how long it took place, but when it stopped, I found myself crawling to the corner of the room, curling up into a coil, afraid something would suddenly appear in front of me. I struggled to keep my eyes wide open until the sun came out. Then, when my friend finally woke up and saw me quivering, he immediately came to my aid. However, even after telling him the truth, he still wouldn't believe me. Somehow, he was convinced I had lost my sanity. Then, he suddenly remembered that they had put surveillance cameras all over the house. As soon as we reviewed the footage, Fred couldn't believe his eyes, and we were both traumatized. When I arrived home, I felt relieved as I hugged my pillow on the bed. However, when I saw the door to my room creak open, I had a nagging feeling I wasn't the only one who came home.
The next story is solely based on a condition called acromegaly, a rare disorder that causes a human to grow after normal growth is stopped. The excess growth hormone in acromegaly causes adults' bones to thicken, and also causes other organisms in the body to grow larger in size. There are a few creepy skits online revolving around the subject, so we figured we'd give our take on it, with of course some nightmare-induced fuel. Here's what it looked like.
It's freaking summer! I want to go out! I want to go out! I want to go out! Why do I have to be the only one to stay inside?
Charlie, close the damn curtains! You know too much vitamin D from the sun will make your condition worse. You need to stay in your room with the curtains closed, okay?
I hate you! Just send me to foster care already!
As a father, it was difficult seeing Charlie grow up literally in his bedroom, and I do mean literally. My wife and I kept him away from the outside world. We were extremely paranoid. We were afraid he would get too much vitamin D from the sun, or accidentally consume something that contained too much calcium, both of which would be a detriment to his condition. Charlie had a condition called acromegaly. It's a condition that's rare amongst the masses. In the simplest way I can put it, it makes you continuously grow even after adulthood. We were homeschooling Charlie since he was a toddler, and we exiled any relationships from his life, as we were very afraid he would get bullied. We tried talking to our son about it, but he very much disagreed with our philosophy. A standard day in Charlie's life was him locked inside his room, consuming a bit of food my wife and I would offer him at the door. So, confused and worried, we consulted several experts in the medical field who left us with more questions than answers. Then, when my son turned 16, he would begin to leave his room once in a while, revealing a distorted face and a height of 7 feet. This made us keep him indoors at all costs. We were afraid he would be treated as some kind of freak, constantly bullied the moment he stepped out the front door. And so we continued the routine, which involved feeding him daily, massaging his limbs whenever they ached, giving him a towel bath in his room, and changing his diapers. It may sound strange that he's wearing diapers at 16, but due to his condition, he couldn't sit properly on the toilet or bring down his underwear. We treated him like a toddler, and to make it convenient, we gave him a handbell in his room which he could use whenever he needed something. My wife told him,
Dear, Mommy understands how much it means to you to hang out with friends your age, but right now it's just not possible.
Furious, Charlie replied,
Then make it possible! How long do you intend to keep me here? Till I'm 10 feet tall? For as long as it takes. By that time, I won't even be able to fit through the damn door! At least let me go out in the night! You have no idea how hard this is for us. We want you to do the things you want to do.
Besides, vitamins provided by the sun might only worsen your condition.
My wife held our boy's hand and sympathized.
Just a little longer, Charlie. When the doctors have the answer to your ailment, you'll be free.
And when is that happening, Mom? It's been so long and none of them have called us back!
Charlie slammed the door on us. I consoled my wife, wrapping my arms around her while she cried, unable to fathom the enigma that consumed our son. My wife and I became unemployed, relying on welfare to get by. However, if it was the only way to continue educating Charlie and keeping him safe, then sacrifices were necessary. Every day, Charlie was annoyed that I had to supervise him like a boss who micromanaged everything. He was growing much faster now. His limbs were longer than the length of his bed, causing his lanky legs to overextend on the floor. It was hard to watch. Not even a king-size bed was good enough. Over the years, when Charlie reached his 20s, he had grew to a whopping 9 to 10 feet, despite all our measures to stunt his growth. It was rare for Charlie to leave his room, but when he did, it looked like Slender Man was in my house. The way he crouched yet his head grazed the ceiling was a disturbing sight to see. One night, Charlie rang the bell again, asking us for a glass of milk. My wife was so frustrated that she cussed and said,
What's the matter with you? Don't be stupid, Charlie. Any more calcium and the growth of your bones would be out of control.
Charlie opted instead for a glass of water, which my wife turned down again. Honey, don't you think you're being a little harsh there? I think water's fine, I said as I placed a hand on her shoulder.
No, this boy needs to stop growing, dear. And the only way to do it is to keep him dehydrated.
My wife had completely lost it. No matter what I said, she only responded with aggression. Dark circles drew the contours of her eyes, and wrinkles consumed her face. But I couldn't blame her. We did everything to find a cure, but we failed to even unearth the faintest possible solution. So eventually, I caved in and told Charlie to follow his mother's advice. It was the only way I could think of to end this nightmare. Besides, we'd always listened to her since she was in charge of all the house rules. Charlie frowned and looked away, not saying another word. Then, during the wee hours of the morning, we heard Charlie's bell violently ringing. My wife tried to get me to check on him. However, I was exhausted after fixing the roof of our house and the pipes in the bathroom.
You do it, honey.
I yawned, hugging my pillow.
I promise to help Charlie tomorrow.
I heard her heavy footsteps as she slammed our bedroom door. Then, 5 minutes later, I heard the bell ring once again. Bewildered, I asked myself,
What? I thought she already went to his room.
The ringing stopped, so I thought my wife had already handled the situation. But just as I was about to shut my eyes, the bell rang again. And this time, I heard it right next to my face. Standing before me was Charlie, with a bloody grin on his face. He then gripped my ankles with his gigantic hands.
Look, Dad, I'm not thirsty anymore!
Charlie then lifted me up by my ankles and began slamming me across my bed like I was a test tube.
Stop, please! I'm sorry!
After a dozen ruthless slams, Charlie drags me up the stairs to his bedroom. As soon as I enter, I saw my wife's corpse on the carpet, her bones and intestines jutting out.
Hey, Dad, does blood have vitamin D and calcium in it?
This story was inspired by this bizarre footage of an ice cream truck coming around a neighborhood in the middle of the night. We were inspired by a real-life case revolving around this individual in the mugshot, who did the unthinkable during his last days as an ice cream truck driver. Here's a dramatized version of the occurrence with a little twist at the end. And I'm not talking about the ice cream flavor either. I used to love the summertime. My family was well off enough to afford relaxing retreats for a couple weeks every summer. We'd go way into the outskirts of town where there was this huge lake for people to fish or go boating, and everybody stayed in a cottage or a cabin built up around it. After I spent the year suffering through high school, the cottage retreats were always something I looked forward to. The kids at my school were toxic, and I had to suppress my love for sweets so I wouldn't be made fun of. But it never mattered in the summertime, because I didn't have to deal with those shallow little kids. I never let on how crazy I was about ice cream. It was just me, my family, and the beating sun, which of course needed an ice cream cone to go along with it. The best part of the whole vacation spot, to me, were the regular visits from the ice cream truck. I loved hearing their little song, no matter when or where I heard it. One day I heard the familiar tune out of my bedroom window. I jumped right up from my bunk bed and grabbed my allowance money and stuffed it in my pocket. I didn't even think about the fact that it was a little late for the ice cream truck to be here, considering it was almost sundown. I just knew that the ice cream truck hadn't come in 3 days, and I was dying for some chocolate ice cream. Before I left, I tugged on my brother's arm and tried to get him to come with me.
Steven, it's the ice cream truck. Come on.
Get lost. He was always glued to his Game Boy. Apparently ice cream wasn't as important as Pokemon. But not for me though. I ran outside as fast as I could and flagged down the truck. The truck careened to a stop across the street and kicked up a bunch of dirt. I went straight up to the window before the dust had even settled. Then the man in the ice cream truck finally appeared, and that's when I finally noticed that something wasn't quite right. For one, this was not the usual ice cream man that I recognized. Instead of a sweet old man, he was a large, deranged-looking creep with an unsettling smile and beady eyes.
Well, hello, little girl. Today's your lucky day. You finally met Mr. Willy Wonka himself. I serve the finest ice creams on this earth, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me.
Willy Wonka? Yeah, right. He doesn't even make ice cream. He makes chocolate.
Don't doubt me now, little one. I manufacture all manner of sweets and treats. I specialize in the frozen varieties at this time of year. So tell me, which of my delicious delights would you like?
I didn't believe for a second that he was actually Willy Wonka. I wasn't that young and stupid, just enough to ignore all the obvious lies to get what I wanted.
I just want a chocolate ice cream cone.
Ah, you're a plain and simple kind of girl. Well, I hate to tell you, but I run out of chocolate ice cream for the day. It's just too popular. I have lots of everything else, though. Do you like strawberry?
Ew, no. I hate strawberry. I just want chocolate. I'm not gonna waste my allowance on anything else.
I see. Well, if you came with me to my chocolate factory, there's plenty of chocolate ice cream there.
No, I can't. My parents would get mad at me.
You're so picky, aren't you? I tell you what, I'll go back to the chocolate factory tonight and come back as soon as I can with your precious chocolate ice cream. You see how hard I'm working for you here, right? You better say yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you, sir.
Don't thank me yet, little one. I'll be back later tonight. And call me Mr. Wonka.
He slammed the window shut and sped off, not bothering to stop for anyone else. I thought that was strange, but I was preoccupied with my disappointment. I did not want to wait for ice cream, but it seemed like that would be what I had to do. I went back inside the cottage in a slump. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I was strangely upset about the whole encounter, and I didn't want to say a word at dinner. I went to bed angry, and I couldn't sleep, so I stayed up and watched some TV. Then, in the middle of the night, when the whole house was asleep, I heard the music again. It didn't sound right coming at 2 in the morning. It was actually really creepy, but I still didn't heed my instincts. I hopped up and got my allowance money once more. I snuck out the front door and there he was, parked right in front of the cottage. The window was already open, and he was staring at me with this absolutely psychotic look in his eyes, grinning from ear to ear. My heart was racing. I just wanted to get the goods and go back inside as soon as possible.
Do you have chocolate ice cream now?
Yes, little missy. $3.99.
I handed him a wad of ones and took the ice cream, immediately tasting it at long last. But upon tasting it, I knew something was wrong. It tasted absolutely horrible, and the texture just felt disgusting. I gagged and dropped the ice cream, falling to my knees. I then began vomiting.
Stupid little girl! That's my hot, steamy crap!
He reached out and pulled me into the truck by my hair. He overpowered me and threw me to the floor, knocking the wind out of me.
We're going to my chocolate factory now, and you're gonna be my little Charlie!
He screamed in my face, then got in the front seat. He locked the door behind him and floored the gas pedal. There were several moments where all I could do was scream. I was covered in vomit and trapped in his truck. He locked and jammed the back door too, so there was no way I could get out. I screamed and banged my fist on the back window. But then I noticed that the windows were blacked out. Eventually the vehicle rolled to a stop. Through the front windshield, I caught a glimpse of what looked to be some rundown motel. I could figure where things were going at that point. But before he could lay his hands on me, the whole earth seemed to shake. The truck jolted forward and crumpled in on itself. We'd been struck by another vehicle, and the sicko was left dazed and bleeding. I had been sitting, but as I stood up and began to look for an escape, I noticed that the back door was now creaked open. Through the gas, I saw my father pulling the doors apart to get to me.
Come on, baby, let's go.
Apparently, he'd been woken up by the commotion outside just in time to get in the car and follow us. I'm grateful that he was able to get me in time, but I've never been able to forget about it. I'm still traumatized years later, and every night, I can't stop myself from wondering what would have happened in that motel room, or what he called his chocolate factory.
Stupid little girl! That's my hot, steamy crap!